and through getting to a point where we become energy secure, sovereign, that we maintain our sovereignty because we are now no longer dependent on any shocks that happen around the globe. And so the vision is energy as the epicenter for the next revolution in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I am happy to be part of an administration that supports this particular vision. And in particular, my colleague here on my left, Honorable Dr. Joy Clark, who together we know that we can make this a reality for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and then by extension, the people of the Caribbean region. So energy as the epicenter for transforming our sustainable island state.
All right, thank you, Minister Maynard. We have in many ways made energy and the energy transition a very hot topic. There is much excitement about what will be taking place in that transition. And more specifically, there is a lot of conversation about the Sustainable Island State Agenda. So we want to take this opportunity to speak about how crucial this transformation is. Minister Maynard spoke about that transformation earlier. How crucial is this transformation, especially when we're talking about accomplishing the goals of the Sustainable Island State Agenda? We'll start with you, Dr. Clark.
Thank you. We've been speaking a lot, and an entire year actually, about the transformation of St. Kitts and Nevis to a sustainable island state. And I think by now, every time we hear a minister speak, you hear the expression sustainable island state, a sustainable island state. We're not saying this because we have been programmed to say it, but we recognize and we believe that within our respective ministerial portfolios, the transition to sustainable island state is a must, but the benefits are tremendous if we do this together. Importantly, our sustainable island state agenda is linked directly to the SDG goals, our 2030 agenda. That's 7 years from now. And if we don't transform globally, regionally, and importantly, locally, according to these 17 goals, then clearly we're missing the mark and we're not protecting the most vulnerable amongst us. We're not protecting the planet. We're not protecting people. That is why when our Prime Minister presented his vision for the new government, the new administration around sustainability, we found it best to twin it with the SDGs. Additionally, it's linked to climate resilience. And a key part of climate resilience is how we transition from our dependency on fossil fuels. So ultimately, as Minister Maynard just articulated, the energy transition is the epicenter. It's that grounding factor around the sustainable island state agenda. Sustainability, it's about people. It's about inclusivity. It's about respecting and embracing differences. And as it relates to energy, it's recognizing that our energy solutions have to be tailored to our unique experience here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And what's unique for us? It's geothermal energy. It's our capacity for wind power. It's the number of hours of sunlight that we have in St. Kitts from various directions, which would allow us to secure a renewable energy future. And that is the premise of sustainability. We're not doing this for now only. It's for the industrial revolution that will be premised on the energy sector in 7 years, the 2030 agenda. And then in another 10 years, the 2040 timeline for our national development plan. And then in another 50 years for the next generation of Kittitians who no longer have to rely on what some of us in the climate justice world speak about, which is colonial forms of energy, decolonizing our link to energy and our external connection to persons who provide fossil fuels. It means what we do in St. Kitts is based on what we generate in St. Kitts, and it frees us financially, economically, socially. We're free to develop. We're free to create the St. Kitts and Nevis for the next 100 years.
Thank you, Minister Clark. That was a mouthful. It really sounded more like a vision. But the Sustainable Island State Agenda is very much a visionary concept where we have to put the necessary framework in place in order to have the actualization. Now, Minister Maynard, specifically, we want you to speak about the role of the energy sector. And before you do, Minister Maynard, I just want confirmation that Minister Brantley is on. He's able to speak. If we can have a cue.
Yes, I'm on. Can you hear me?
All right, this looks like he's talking, but there's no audio coming through our system. All right, so I allow the tech team to continue with that. Minister Maynard?
Right, thank you again, Ms. Harris. Yes, so the role of the energy sector, as I said, energy is really the epicenter. Think about anything that we want to do. Let's start with water. We are in a crisis situation with our water resources. Rainfall has decreased by 20% over just the last 10 years. This year, we only got about 60% of the water that we got last year, and so on and so on. Our aquifers are being threatened with saltwater intrusion. The UN has classified us as one of the most water-scarce countries in the world. Well, what is the solution for water? Well, we live in a vast ocean that we could never deplete. In fact, we could never take out the water faster than it is going in because of climate change. But what do we need in order to convert the water that is around us to something that is useful for our everyday lives? We need energy. And that has been the constraint in terms of moving towards desalination, is the cost of energy. So if you reduce the cost of energy, if you make it more sustainable, then it means we can solve water. So, as I've said in some conferences before, you solve energy, you solve water. Next portion, food. If it is that we want to be sustainable and we want to be able to feed ourselves, we need the water, first of all, to be able to grow the food. So energy is needed to solve the water, and the water is needed to solve the food. But we also need to be able to package that food and process that food. And those take tremendous amount of energy. For instance, fish farming as one solution, energy intensive. So you solve energy, you solve water, you solve food. What about industry and employment? Right now in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have heavy social programs that are assisting those who are less fortunate and those who are in need. But this can never be a sustainable model. In order for that to be overcome, we have to put our people to work. But in a small society like ours, how do we put our people to work? Well, we need to get involved in manufacturing, high-level, high-skilled manufacturing. What does manufacturing need? Intensive amounts of energy. You solve energy, you solve water, you solve food, you solve the industries or manufacturing. When we think about our digital transformation, for instance, and we want to become an e-government, all of these things are powered by energy. In fact, servers that manage these systems take a lot of energy. If we want to delve into crypto mining, for instance, and we want to be a hub for something like that, we need energy. So therefore, the role of energy, as I said, is really the critical, it is the crux of the matter. You solve energy, you solve your sustainable island state agenda. I could go on and on with respect to energy. One more I would probably add is with respect to manufacturing and job creations, etc. People will ask, well, okay, if you solve energy, St. Kitts and Nevis is a very small place. We only use 27 megawatts right now in St. Kitts, peak probably 9, maybe in Nevis, that's about 36 megawatts. Let's round that off to 40 megawatts. Well, you're saying that you have a gigawatt worth of power in Nevis from geothermal, which is 1,000 megawatts. You have 800 megawatts worth of wind. You have a tremendous amount as well for solar. Well, what are you going to do with all of this energy? Is it useful for us to come and invest in that energy? Well, because it's so abundant and because we need so little, then we have to find a way of how do we package this energy so that we can sell it, so that we can turn energy not just as a product or a service that we use, but also create an energy sector that we can effectively sell energy in different forms, whether to our manufacturing community, whether it is we convert it to green molecules such as green hydrogen, or whether it is we produce ammonia for fertilizers around the globe, whether, as I said, we go into crypto mining, or whether it is we give energy to our neighbors in St. Martin, in Antigua, in Puerto Rico. Those are the possibilities that exist with St. Kitts and Nevis and its energy, renewable energy potential. So the role of energy is to actually accomplish and be the linchpin to accomplish our sustainable island state agenda.
Thank you, Minister Maynard, and you have already started to move us over into the next half of the conversation that we're about to have about the thrust. One of the things that we have heard time and time again, especially from this new administration, is about the thrust towards renewable energy. We want to use this opportunity now to speak to some of the concrete steps that have been taken, are being taken as it relates to how we're going to have this energy mix, how we're going to have the renewable energy incorporated.
Thank you again, Madam Harris. I don't know, have we gotten Premier Brantley online as yet? Is he online? Or he
I've
is?
I've been online for some time listening. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you now. We can hear you now. Okay. So I will defer some of this question to Premier as well. But just to say that upon coming to government, I'm talking about a couple concrete steps. Upon coming to government, we were presented with an opportunity that existed for the exploration, or rather the fruition of geothermal in Nevis, where it was required for the federal government to support an initiative for drilling of production wells in Nevis. And when that came before our administration, without hesitation, we said we completely and fully support this initiative. And so I would leave Premier Brantley to speak about the trajectory of that and where we are now with respect to geothermal. Similarly, we met projects about solar and others. And what we have done is we have gone, realigned those projects with our sustainable island state agenda to ensure that it meets what our thrust is going to be. And very shortly, we will make announcements on some concrete steps that we have taken to get us to maybe 30% renewable energy in 2 years and maybe close to 50 or 60 in 3 years from now, depending on the success of the geothermal wells and the solar projects which we are taking on. Additionally, some other concrete steps that have been taken even some years ago. I don't know how long, but at least over 10, 11, 12 years, the government had taken the initiative then to reduce all concessions, to give concessions and reduce all taxes on anything related to renewable energy, in particular solar panels and so on, so that anyone who wished to invest in those renewable energy equipment and so on could do so. So that was a very forward-thinking step. Also, I remember at that time, the government made a push to enlighten or to educate the public about turning to renewable energy light bulbs, for instance, and using energy efficient LED lamps in your household to reduce your electricity bill. Other concrete steps that we're taking now is in light of the fact that we are moving towards a renewable energy state, we need to electrify a number of things, including our vehicles. We obviously are very dependent on fossil fuel to run our vehicles, but St. Kitts and Nevis is actually a very unique and positive case for electric vehicles, more so than larger countries. Because in St. Kitts and Nevis, well, in St. Kitts in particular, the island main road is 32 miles long. An electric vehicle has range for at least 200 miles. So with a single charge that you can charge at your house overnight while you sleep can last you an entire week of driving in St. Kitts. And so, and similarly, even more so, in Nevis. So therefore, there is no need for us to go into large-scale infrastructure for charging stations. They will not be as necessary because you can charge at home. And as I said in another conference, as long as you're going home, as you're supposed to be doing when night comes, you should not have a problem, right? And I have proven this because I have gone ahead and got myself an electric vehicle. I don't drive it every single day, but when I did my test, even at our current rates of electricity, it would cost me about $50 or thereabout to fill it from 0 to 100%, about $50. If I had to fill up a tank from 0 to full, it's going to cost me at least $150, $200. So immediately there's an immediate saving. So if we have renewable energy, we can have electrify our transport system. So that's another concrete step that we're moving towards in developing a policy to incentivize the use of electric vehicles. And finally, another concrete step which we hope to unveil very shortly and we may talk about is developing the feed-in tariff for renewables. So for instance, you may have investors, homes, whomever, who are interested in producing energy. Well, there must be some incentive for them to do so. And so we're looking at a feed-in tariff where you will sell your electricity to the utility, help to provide power to the grid, thereby reducing the need immediately for the power station to generate that electricity via fossil fuels. So those are some of the things that we're doing, and there are others, but I suspect we'll get to them, and I'll defer now to Premier Brantley with respect to geothermal on Nevis.
Good morning, Premier Brantley. We want to thank you for joining us for this panel discussion this morning, and thank you as well for your patience as we have been ironing out some technical difficulties. As you have not been able to participate in the panel so far, I want to take the opportunity to allow you to provide your words of vision, especially as it relates to Nevis from the vantage point of your ministry, and also to speak to the thrust towards renewable energy, more specifically geothermal on Nevis.
Well, thank you very much. As you know, I'm all the way in Cartagena, and I speak shortly at a conference here. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity, and I greet, of course, Ministers Maynard and Clark, who are on the panel. I've been listening for some time, and I think they've laid out quite eloquently what the vision is. I think it's a shared vision, and that became very apparent in the last sitting of our National Assembly, where we had a joint resolution. I say joint because it had the unanimous support of government and opposition members there present in relation to the collective thrust of the country now in relation to renewable energy, and more specifically the geothermal project on Nevis. I would want to echo the sentiments that I've heard thus far. I don't think that there is any benefit to repetition. Both have expressed very clearly where we are and what our ambitions look like. And I want to commend the fact that we are all now, it appears, on the same page, Bastia and Charlestown, working together to seek to harness this gift from God, as I've put it, which is geothermal energy. I think that allows us in a very significant way to achieve our SDGs. It allows us to transition our economy away from fossil fuels, certainly. It allows us to play our part in the context of the global fight against climate change. It allows us to reposition our people in a very positive way. Minister Clark made a very poignant statement when she said that sustainability is about people. And ultimately, we cannot develop our country and take it to the next level if we don't have energy. Energy fuels the world. Energy fuels economies around the world. When energy prices go up, it is and tends to be an inflationary aspect, if you will, because of the great dependence of the world on energy. And as you look across the world, you look at Saudi Arabia, you look at the United Arab Emirates, you look at Norway, you look at countries around the world, you realize that many of those countries have economies that have been based in large part on energy. And I think that we now have an opportunity to do it. But we have an opportunity to do it, but to do it right and to do it using renewable energy. And I share the vision that has been expressed, that we will have the opportunity. There's someone who's talking whose mic is live.
Right?
Yeah, hello? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are, but if the host of the show can please mute KPS, I think that is it. The name KPS.
Okay.
Go to participants and mute.
He's muted now, so
okay.
remember.
All right.
Good. I'm sorry about that. I was hearing that person speaking. So just to say that the vision, and I think that we have a very real opportunity to not just alter, but to revolutionize Secre and Nevis. We are blessed by a number of factors. One, the large amounts of geothermal energy that are promised, the large deposits that are available, well in excess, as we've heard, of our current demand. Even factoring growth, it is well in excess of what we can anticipate in terms of growth. Two, our geography. Secre and Nevis, unlike other twin or multi-island states in the region, we are only 2 miles apart, and 2 miles of fairly shallow water. And so we have the real opportunity to bridge these two islands in terms of undersea cables to get energy from one to the other in a very easy and economical way. Three, we are in an archipelago in our region where we have neighboring islands. The minister has mentioned St. Martin, but you have the Dutch islands, Sebastian, you have the French islands, St. Martin, you have St. Bart's, we have Antigua, Anguilla. We have all of these islands which are potentially well within the range of where we can transmit effectively using undersea cables. Fourth, we have the potential to export energy using green hydrogen, the development of green ammonia, and so we have other industries which can develop. The minister made a fundamental point, which I think should not be lost on us, that if we can solve energy, we solve water. If we solve water, we solve food. If we solve water, energy, and food, we have the basic requirements for sustainable state moving forward. And whilst I hear it being said that we will have a mix of solar and wind and all of that, the truth is that with geothermal energy and what the science is telling us we have available to us potentially, I feel that we can revolutionize what we do. Imagine a tourism industry which is now entirely green. And the fact that all of us can get up. I believe that the ministers are headed to COP. Imagine the ability to get up at COP in the UAE and say that Secre and Nevis is now 100% fossil fuel free. The minister mentioned his electric car, but imagine not just him, but the entire society moving to electric. All of our buses, all of our coastal buses, all of our transportation, all of our scooters, every single bit of transportation would now be powered by electricity. And it's powered by electricity because that electricity is now cheaper. We talk about food processing, so not just producing more food, but value added. And we know that, again, the heat that's generated by geothermal can be used in the food processing business. The ability to attract industry, as you've heard, manufacturing, as you've heard. All of these now become critically important. I spoke recently to our dear friends from Taiwan about what it would take to set up some industry in St. Kitts and Nevis as one of their closest and oldest allies to produce microchips. As you know, Taiwan is a world leader. And immediately the answer was large amounts of energy. And so I believe that the importance of conferences such as this is to continue that conversation and to sensitize not only you who are in the room, who are already experts in this area, but our general public, that we are now moving beyond talk and we're getting to a point where we can implement what promises to be a revolution in St. Kitts and Nevis and allows us now that added sector to our economy. We want jobs, we want new jobs, and I believe that the renewable energy sector can do all of that and much more as we transform St. Kitts and Nevis into that sustainable state that we keep hearing about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier Brantley. I'm going to allow Minister Clark to chime in on the conversation now about renewable energy and the energy transition and the energy mix.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harris. And I was really looking forward to answering this question because from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action in particular, the transition to renewable energy, it's not just a goal for our ministry, it's a global goal. And this stems from the Paris Agreement, from the Glasgow Accord, in terms of how the world transitions or phases out, or in some cases phases down, which is a more disappointing language, phases out fossil fuel use. Our nationally determined contributions, which is our global commitment to reducing our use of fossil fuels, and most of you in this room would have contributed to that document and to that percentage of a 60% reduction by 2030, if I'm not quoting the year incorrectly, right? Now, how do we get there? When we head to COP later in the week, the first couple sessions will be about the just energy transition. And I emphasize just, because it's not just about countries moving to renewable energy options. It's how do we carry the most vulnerable in our societies with us? Currently, there is an energy gap or energy poverty experienced in particular by small island developing states or by rural communities or very vulnerable communities, women, the unemployed. And this is based on the fossil fuel industry. When we transition to the renewable energy sector, we don't want to leave those very same people behind who suffered during our continued and lengthy dependence on fossil fuels. Additionally, for St. Kitts and Nevis and for many Caribbean islands, the transition must also be about tailored industry, tailored technology, which suits what we need here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And both Premier and Minister Maynard have said, we have the potential to produce much more than we need. What do we do with it? And apart from just producing the energy, how do we drive the energy sector and fuel the tourism industry? And what they're speaking about in terms of manufacturing and jobs, the transition is then speaking to how do we make livelihoods more livable, more sustainable for persons working in the tourism sector, for persons working in the energy sector, for persons whose livelihoods are dependent on cheap energy, on secure energy, on renewable energy. Importantly, the transition is also about inclusivity, and that's why I opened my opening statement said, this is the room that you want to be in, but it is also the room that would give you some amount of jitters, because everyone here has something critical to say about what St. Kitts and Nevis does in our transition? How do we define our pathway? Are we ensuring that it is inclusive? Are we ensuring that we're protecting every sector, every person? Is there a voice from social services? Is there a youth voice? Is there a voice representing the elderly? Is there a voice representing the migrant community? How are they going to be guaranteed access to cheaper energy and secure energy? And how are we going to create a transition pathway that's grounded on inclusivity, diversity, paying attention to our local knowledge, our technologies, our economy, and most importantly, of our overall vision of becoming a sustainable island state that has very little ties to the external world when it comes to energy provision.
We have had a lot of conversations about renewable energy, especially as we speak to the future. So we've heard about the 2030 agenda. We've heard about what the plans are within the next 2 to 3 years. One of the other things that we want to have a conversation about as we begin to more or less wrap up the conversations about some of the other futuristic plans. Now, Minister Maynard would have already gone ahead and spoken a bit about the electrification and the electric vehicles. The theme for the CARICOM Energy Month surrounds electrification, so we won't go so much more into depth in that area in particular. However, we want to speak to some of the legislative changes that we might see in the pipeline. I know you already, Minister Maynard, spoke about the policy, the electric vehicle policy and the feed-in tariffs, but we want to also have a conversation as to what are some of the more futuristic plans that have been outlined for this sector. So I will allow Minister Premier Brantley as well to chime in the conversation, but we'll start with you, Minister Maynard.
Thank you. I think perhaps I went ahead a bit and I spoke about quite a number of them in terms of futuristic plans. And I think Premier Brantley also added to that when he spoke in particular of imagining the type of St. Kitts and Nevis you would have where everyone is driving an electric vehicle or electric scooter, or buses are fueled by renewable energy. So we have discussed some of the futuristic plans already. So it's just about how do we expand on those. Let's take, for instance, recently we were in Jamaica for the 8th Sustainable Energy Forum, and we had a presentation from a Caribbean national, I think he was from Jamaica, who is presently doing the trial analysis of running a hydrogen-powered aircraft. And in the presentation, he would have alluded to the fact that the hydrogen would have been created in the Caribbean. So imagine on our sister island of Nevis, or maybe down in St. Paul's in St. Kitts, because we will have one grid, we are producing hydrogen. A Dash 8 lands here in St. Kitts, and then the hydrogen is loaded onto the aircraft, and that Dash 8 or that ATR, which is the one, the Dash 8 is the old plane that Liat used to use, and now they use the ATR. Imagine those flying around on fuel generated.
I need your ID number, please.
There's someone whose name is DJ on the live. Can you just mute your mic?
Clean fuel generated or produced in
your ID number is 640412.
On the Zoom, whose name is DJ, can you please mute your mic, or can the host please mute that person's mic?
Yes. Sorry about that. Where the energy is produced in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so we can also solve the issue of regional travel, reducing the cost of travel by using hydrogen-powered aeroplanes. And this is real. They are now doing their test flights, if I'm not mistaken, based on what we saw. And so these are some real possibilities that exist for our nations, such as St. Kitts and Nevis. And I must add here that there are others in the Caribbean that are pushing forward. In fact, I think Dominica has already signed an agreement with a manufacturing company in Trinidad to provide green hydrogen. And so we need to make sure that we do not fall behind the 8 ball here at all. So these are some of the futuristic plans that we can think about. Also, I think that Minister Clark can also speak about carbon credits and how our ventures into renewable energy can aid us in benefiting from that as well. So these are some of the things, because I spoke about cryptocurrency already, I spoke about digital transformation with servers. We spoke about, well, I probably could go in a little more in depth in terms of the one grid. For instance, right now, obviously the 2 grids are separated. We're separated by water. So if, for instance, Nevis develops 30 megawatts of power, they only need 9. By simply connecting our grids between St. Kitts and Nevis, then Nevis can power St. Kitts, for instance, if St. Kitts is unable to power itself. Similarly, if we have a solar installation in St. Kitts and we have excess capacity, then we can also power Nevis. That we get from going to one grid. And one final innovation, not really innovation, but one final possibility is when the cruise ships come to our ports, presently we do not offer them electricity. So they run their diesel engines usually while they are here for 10, 12 hours. They burn obviously a lot of fuel. If we have excess energy, we can sell energy to the cruise ships. They can take off their diesel engines. They will get a benefit because they're contributing less emissions to the atmosphere. We will get a benefit because we're able to provide them with affordable energy, and we all win. So there are endless possibilities with respect to pursuing this energy transition.
All right, Premier. Yes.
Yes, please allow me to chime in because I'm going to have to leave shortly to speak here. But I agree again with Minister Maynard, the hard act to follow, because I think he has outlined very clearly what the vision is. I pick up where he ended by saying that the possibilities are endless. I see the exploration, the successful harnessing of renewable energy, and more specifically geothermal energy, as potentially making St. Kitts and Nevis the Norway of the Caribbean. Allowing us to transform, that's the word I keep coming back to, our local economy, allowing us to transform not just St. Kitts and Nevis, but potentially allowing us to transform the archipelago in which we live. That we can, for example, prove that we can bring the neighboring islands also within the realm of societies that are transformed based on renewable energy. Imagine, if you will, that we have that potential, not only to transform us locally, but also within the sub-region as well. So I think that the possibilities are indeed endless. With a problem that I anticipate we're going to have, it's a good problem, that of excess energy. It means that we have to find uses for that locally and by way of export. And so I am very enthused at the possibility. I will, however, sound a word of caution. And we've had this problem a lot in Nevis, because in big countries, we talk about an energy mix. And major countries where it tends to be that demand outstrips supply, we have a situation where they try to have various forms of energy informing their energy mix. The difficulty that I've had, certainly speaking as a premier now of Nevis, is that because our consumption is so small, and because our local utility depends in large measure on the customers that it has to ensure that it is economically viable, we are always concerned about too many people bringing in too many different types of energy. So we have had proposals in Nevis for solar, we've had proposals for waste to energy, we've had proposals for various forms of energy. But of course, most people, investors who are coming, want you to guarantee their return by way of a power purchase agreement. And we had the real risk of the island being asked to commit to purchase far more energy than it could use. I have heard Minister Maynard, and he and I have spoken privately about this as well, about the sort of allowing private individuals. You know, we have had a situation with some of our larger companies saying that they want to install solar. And then, of course, the question is, can they sell some of that energy to the grid if they don't need all of it? And I'm just sounding a word of caution, because for me, the question is going to be sometimes, how much energy can we actually handle? It's a good problem to have, but I think that it is something that we should be conscious about, that if we're talking about almost a gigabyte of geothermal, we're talking about the potential for solar, we're talking about the potential for wind. Most of it comes at different cost points as well. Some of that is more expensive than others. Some is better for base load, as geothermal is, than say solar. But the issue for me is that we not extend ourselves. I suppose that's what I'm trying to get to. We not extend ourselves too far, that the supply outstrips the demand, but rather we manage the resources that we have in such a way that we can exploit to the maximum the economic utility of resources such as geothermal energy. In relation to the one grid, that is an ongoing discussion. I think it's a very interesting idea to connect us in terms of, as the minister has pointed out, moving energy from one island to the next, ensuring that we have redundancy built in so that power outages and downtimes become a thing of the past. But my vision, ladies and gentlemen, is that St. Kitts and Nevis will become the model, the best place to live, the best place to work, the best place to function. I believe that we are on the cusp of something truly great. And I want to again commend the government in Bastia for having the vision and sharing the vision and being of one accord with us on a smaller island to see how we can really work together to maximize the benefit of this resource for all, and I emphasize all, of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Those regrettably will have to be my last words. I am sorry, but I do have to go. I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for having me, and trust and hope that this is only the start, but we can continue with this dialogue with each other and with the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Premier Brantley, for joining us. And we're actually just about to wrap up the panel discussion, so you're not leaving too prematurely. But thank you for providing your contributions this morning. Ladies and gents, we're just about at the end of this panel discussion this morning. The clock has sounded. I'm going to take this opportunity, Dr. Clark, I'm going to start with you to allow you to provide any brief and parting words based on what we will have discussed this morning.
Thank you. Briefly, the future is sustainable, it's possible, and it's attainable if we do it collaboratively. And if we remember to be inclusive and to always think of the people that we are trying to protect and empower as we protect our environment through geothermal energy, of course. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Clark, for the insights that you would have provided, and hopefully we can get a lot more inclusivity, especially as it relates to gender in the energy sector and a part of these conversations. Minister Maynard, I allow you the opportunity to provide your brief parting words.
All right, I know the emphasis on brief. Very difficult to tell a politician that, I think, but I'll oblige. So firstly, I want to thank everyone for being here. In the first instance, we do have an extraordinary opportunity before us, and it really requires our collaboration. We have to end whatever existed in the past about not supporting each other in this journey. It has to be a St. Kitts and Nevis event. It has to be a St. Kitts and Nevis agenda. It has to be a St. Kitts and Nevis sustainable island state. Once we work together, as I've said countless times, even before my political journey, we become an unstoppable force. I want to remind all of that. It just is how it is. Once we work together, once we explore the potential that we have in Nevis for geothermal, St. Kitts and Nevis can become literally and figuratively the beacon of light in the Eastern Caribbean and the Caribbean. So thank you very much for having me on this panel. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Minister Maynard, and thank you to all of the persons who were tuned into our live. We were live on Facebook and possibly on YouTube as well. Thank you to all of the attendees this morning. It was my pleasure to be your moderator for the first panel discussion. I apologize in advance, Mr. Woods, that I've taken up a bit of your time for the upcoming panel, but when we begin to have conversations about energy, it is so rich and there's so many things that we can discuss, and we never ever get to talk about everything. But I encourage you to continue to stay tuned into what's taking place this morning for our energy conference. So thank you, Minister Maynard, and thank you, Minister Clark.
Please help me welcome Mr. Cosbert Woods, Country Coordination Officer of the United Nations. He will be our moderator for the second panel discussion. Please give him a round of applause.
Pleasant good morning to everyone present in the room, as well as those viewing and participating virtually. As indicated, my name is Cosbert Woods. I'm with the UN Resident Coordination Office for Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean, and I will be your moderator for the next session entitled Providing Technical Support for the Energy Transition. Now, I was very happy when Dr. Brown asked me to moderate this session, because one of the key aspects of our regional coordination office is coordination. Being amongst the various UN agencies, funds, and programs that work with St. Kitts and Nevis and other countries in the Eastern Caribbean, and also collaborating with development partners. So for this session, we have an esteemed group of panelists, albeit participating virtually. So unfortunately, for those in the room and those online, you may have to look at my face from time to time when the panelists are not speaking. But we have an esteemed group of panelists from the Caribbean Cooperative of the Measurement, Reporting, and Verification, or the MRV Hub, from the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, Secre, from the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and the OECS Commission Sustainable Energy Unit. And at this time, I will ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their respective institutions. So I'll ask you to do that in about 45 seconds to a minute, starting with the MRV Hub. So, Ms. Joseph, if you can just introduce yourself for the benefit of everyone. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Connor?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. Good morning, everyone in St. Kitts and Nevis. My name is Bennis Joseph, and I work as a Senior Program Associate with the Caribbean Cooperative Measurement Reporting and Verification Hub, or as we commonly call ourselves, the MRV Hub. And the MRV Hub is a service-oriented corporation which provides support in the areas of national communications, biennial update reports, biennial transparency reports, mitigation analysis, greenhouse gas inventories, measurement reporting, verification, and support needs reporting for countries in the region. There's a few more stuff that we provide, but as we go along, we'll talk more about that. So thank you so very much. Hope that was under a minute.
Thank you very much. We now move on to Dr. Garner from Secre. Dr. Garner, are you hearing us? Okay. While Secre sorts out their audio, we can hear from the OECS Commission Sustainable Energy Unit.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Woods. My name is Judith Ephraim Schmidt. I am the Program Director for Sustainable Energy at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission, the OECS. It is a pleasure for us to be here, and we want to, first of all, congratulate the government of St. Kitts and Nevis on this very timely event.
Thank you very much, Judith. UNEP.
Thank you, Cosbert. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Asha Lascelles, adding an Australian accent to this panel this morning. I work for the United Nations Environment Programme. I'm officer in charge for the GEF mitigation unit globally. So we work with countries to support them in accessing funds of the Global Environment Facility for accelerating and pursuing their sustainable development objectives, particularly around energy. So very happy to be part of this panel, and apologies for not being able to be in the room today.
Thank you very much, Asha. Checking again to see if we have our panelists from Secre. Okay, well, we will move along and hopefully he'll be able to join us soon and make some very useful contributions. So, right, so just to set a bit of context for this discussion, as we would know, St. Kitts and Nevis continues to rebound and rebuild its economy following the devastating effects of COVID-19. And in an effort to do so, providing affordable, clean, and sustainable energy to its citizens and residents was among one of the key initiatives that the government would have indicated is of major priority. And this is also in keeping with the targets for the Sustainable Development Goal 7, which looks at affordable and clean energy. Now, we know that St. Kitts and Nevis, like some of the other Caribbean countries, relies heavily on fossil fuels, as we would have heard in the discussions this morning, for electricity generation, transportation, and as such are vulnerable to fluctuations in the international oil price market. And this directly impacts the cost of energy in the region and here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, we have heard about some of the strides that the government is making to address the energy issues and to create that level of sustainability. But as the country's energy demands continues to grow, I'm sure that we're quite aware that the main grid continues to experience some overcapacity challenges which has resulted in some issues affecting the efficiency of the nation's energy supply. So therefore, if St. Kitts and Nevis is to grow and develop in a sustainable manner, there has to be a series of strategic and interlinked actions being undertaken which supports a sustainable island state appropriate energy program for green transition in St. Kitts and Nevis. So that leads me to my first question. Mindful that many of the Caribbean SIDS tend to face similar challenges and issues in relation to energy efficiency and providing sustainable energy for its citizens and residents, what regional approaches and mechanisms are being undertaken or can be deployed to address some of these common or shared challenges? And I'd like the discussion to start off with the OECS Commission. So Judith, if you can give us your perspectives on some of the common challenges and initiatives that are being undertaken to address this in a integrated and a coordinated fashion.
Well, thank you, Cuthbert. I think you've really hit the nail on the head in that even within the Caribbean grouping, the smaller islands have a certain level of uniqueness to them, and that includes St. Kitts and Nevis. I guess hence the collaboration under the OECS grouping as well. Of course, we've underscored that we have the high energy cost, we depend on imported fossil fuel, and we have all articulated that we want to have an energy transition where clean and indigenous energy really transforms and drives our development. But I think there's the other important point I think that was also highlighted in the previous panel is that energy is cross-cutting. But within our small island context, we have some vulnerabilities. And these, I think, need to be addressed when we consider our sustainable energy transition. Yes, we do have the resources. Yes, we do have bright people. But when we look at our scale, in the context of energy, that is very important. When we look at our installed capacity, when we look at the size of even our renewable energy projects. So for instance, in the case of St. Kitts and Nevis, as was said earlier, there is a lot of potential for geothermal energy, for instance. But can we really utilize all of this geothermal energy? That in of itself is a challenge. When we look at the population that is available, we have some very bright young people, some very seasoned professionals in the energy sector and in other sectors. But I mean, developing those sustainable energy technologies calls for a multidisciplinary approach, but it calls for some skills that have not been readily developed in our part of the world. So I think all these present an opportunity for us to take a number of regional initiatives to help us collectively address our sustainable energy development goals. So if we look, for instance, when it comes to capacity building, we don't expect in any of those islands where we have geothermal resources that we would have all the personnel, all the institutions, all the policies at this point, or perhaps in the near future, to support the successful development of a plant. But what can we do collectively to build capacity, to ensure that we have the technical skills, the legal skills, the business skills that are needed to support a successful geothermal project? We have been collaborating primarily on geothermal energy in the past, I would say 2 years. We've had some support from the Caribbean Development Bank and through a few other partners, including the EU CIF and the IDB. And we have developed collectively, and I say collectively because it was a joint discussion which led to the development of this project, the OECS GeoBuild. And I think the Premier before mentioned that he was here in Cartagena. We also have a delegation from the OECS in terms of the countries benefiting under this project here in Cartagena at the 10th GeoLAC conference. This is seen as an opportunity for us to really empower our people to get a better understanding of geothermal energy and their implications for development on the ground. Now, the GeoBuild project is just one initiative, but it is designed in such a way that it is very comprehensive. So it provides capacity building in all the areas that we expect to be impacted by geothermal energy, so legal, economic, public awareness, environmental and social impacts, the engineering aspects, the geotechnical aspects. It is an opportunity for our member states to build their local capacity and to supplement that capacity, because we understand that it is a novel undertaking for us. So we won't be able to build this capacity that is needed to drive those projects in 2 or 3 years. But where it is necessary for us to get expertise from outside, it allows us to buy those resources, so to speak, to help augment and to provide some level of backstopping and advisory support in the various specialized areas. So apart from the training, it is an opportunity for us to share in terms of best practice. It is also an opportunity for us to leverage where skills exist in one country. There's nothing stopping us as a region from sharing our national expertise, from sharing our national experiences, and addressing those types of big sustainable energy projects as a whole. There are other opportunities. So I've spoken in the context of geothermal and this broad capacity building initiative, but there are other approaches that we can adopt as a region when it comes to policy development. If we look at the policy, the legislation, those circumstances in our small island developing states, they are very similar. And where there are opportunities for harmonization, for standardization, again, for sharing of best practice, it makes sense for us to leverage those and see how we can support each other and provide some kind of common standard that is beneficial to us. We are also trying to promote the whole issue of pool procurement, again, recognizing that our small size, our small markets can sometimes be a disadvantage. But if we are able to bundle these small markets together, we can create a greater energy market, which is better able to negotiate for better prices, where we can, get the attention of some of the suppliers, and we can, again, use the standards that we hope to set to ensure that we have quality, sustainable energy technologies coming on the market. I think at the OECS level, we have used that successfully in the area of pharmaceuticals. And so right now we are trying to see how we can bring this to other areas, including sustainable energy. So whether it be for renewable energy products, whether it be for energy efficiency products, or even consultancies, where we are able to have a pool procurement approach, which allows us to get better services and better prices for our products, is something that we would like to promote. And I think there's strong support for that. Of course, resource mobilization is also another area where we recognize that sometimes small projects, as impactful as they may be at the national level, they can sometimes be a little burdensome, I would say, in inverted commas, when it comes to the administrative processes. And so where there's an opportunity for us to collectively do projects across a region, when we're dealing with partners, it can sometimes be more attractive to the partners because it helps reduce the administrative costs and leads to other efficiencies. So I'll stop here for now, and we can always delve into some of the other issues in more detail, but I would allow you to move on to some of our panelists.
Thank you very much, Judith. I think you said quite a mouthful in terms of adopting a multidisciplinary approach, which is built on experience sharing, harmonization of common standards across the region, and looking at the successes of the pharmaceutical pool procurement arrangement and seeing where it can transition to support the energy industry. I don't know if our colleague from Secre is connected as net.
Yes, sir, I am online.
Okay,
Morning.
great, Dr. Garner. Yes. Did you hear the question that was posed earlier?
It's really, I didn't hear it, so if you could repeat it, that would be useful. Thank you.
Okay, yes. So just quickly, in terms of the discussion that we're currently having, we are touching on some of the similar challenges that small island developing states face with regards to developing energy efficiency and providing sustainable.
Oh, yes, I heard that. Thanks. Yes.
Right. So we wanted to know, in regards to the work that Secre is doing, any specific regional approaches or mechanisms that Secre is deploying to address some of these common challenges.
Yes, thank you, Danasio, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Devon Gardner, and I'm the head of technical programs at the Caribbean Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, which we call the Secre. Before I delve into your to answer your question, Danasio, I just want to give a little 30-second background on the Secre without necessarily detailing the meeting too long, because that helps to contextualize the answer that I'm going to give. The Secre was established in April 2018 by an agreement, a multi-government agreement among countries for which the heads of governments are signatories. The establishment of the Secre started in 2014. In fact, the official start is given as July 2014, when the, if you want to call it, the validation workshop was held in Dominica around whether or not there should be the establishment of a center for renewable energy and energy efficiency within the region. And in July 2017, heads of governments eventually adopted an agreement that took a process of consultation and deliberations and political level discussions at the level of ministers of energy to come to fruition. And that agreement was adopted in July 2017 at heads of government meeting. It, in fact, was the 38th regular conference of the heads meeting in Grenada that adopted the agreement. And eventually the agreement was ratified by enough member states based on its requirements to enter into force in April 2018. So the Secre as a legal entity of the region has been established since April 2018. So in the scheme of institutions, the Secre is probably the new kid on the block. And I wanted to set that context. Now, the genesis of the Secre being established, our push for establishment in 2014 is significant because it was in April 2013 that member states of CARICOM had passed what are agreed on what was then called the CARICOM energy policy. The first time in the history of CARICOM, there was agreement among member states at a ministers' meeting on the 1st of April in Trinidad and Tobago on what a common energy policy for the region would look like. So the CARICOM energy policy, as we know it, was established in the 1st of April 2013. And along with that policy was also established what we call the Caribbean Sustainable Energy Roadmap and Strategy, or the CSERS. So it was really a roadmap and strategy that would allow countries and orientate and guide the implementation, both at regional and national levels, of the sustainable energy aspects of the policy. The view was that countries were already quite adept and, if you want to call it, establish mechanisms for the implementation of the traditional aspects of the sector, that is the fossil aspects of the sector, and also the view is that we should be encouraging the countries to shift away from that traditional fossil aspects of the sector. So the focus on the implementation side should be on the sustainable energy aspects, and so the implementation pieces focus on the sustainable energy roadmap and strategy, which we call the CSERS. And so the C3 was established pretty much as a response to the approval of the CARICOM energy policy and the CSERS. In that sense, the countries determined that there was need for, as we truly put it, elements that could pull on the regional expertise across multiple member states, backstop, backfill, and support countries in respect to how they would pursue renewable energy and energy efficiency actions and activities. So the Secre was established in a way that made it implementation focused. So I want to start with that. So in that regard, the way we operate is that everything that we look at within the context of the Secre is through a climate resilience lens. And why is it looked at through a climate resilience lens? Because when the Secre was being established, the Secre was established really to help countries to improve the energy situations, not as an end in itself, but really as a means to build resilience within the countries, to build sector resilience and to also build social resilience and economic resilience within the countries, ensure that the countries are able to withstand what was then the projected impacts and still remain the projected impacts of climate change. So that was really the way in which the Secre was set up. So the view is that when the energy program of the Secre is to be pursued and is to be done in a way which supports countries, it is always not supposed to be looked at simply through the lens of replacing a fossil source with a renewable source, but really it's supposed to be looked at through the lens of ensuring that that renewable utilization or the energy efficiency applications that are being integrated into the energy system within the countries are being done in such a way that it is providing a transformative benefit and creating what you would refer to as a novel outcome that makes the system much more flexible, much more diverse, much more adaptable, and much more capable of supporting the resilience needs of the country. So there will be naturally a climate mitigation benefit which will emerge if you're using renewable energy and energy efficiency, because of course you're looking at low carbon technologies. But the low carbon technologies are being utilized in ways which ensure that you're getting electricity systems that are able to withstand better withstand potential impacts of climate, such as some of the hydrometeorological events that we sometimes face, like hurricanes and storms, recognizing that, of course, when we put in solar and wind and hydro and those kind of technologies in some of the countries in the region, those technologies are very weather-sensitive technologies and, of course, requires even more attention to be paid to the volatilities in the weather systems that have been caused by climate, if it is that we have to be able to generate in a predictable way the electricity and the energy that is necessary for our end use system to be supported. And to a large extent, to understanding what climate variability will do to the end use sectors, to the water sector. We know in St. Kitts are the case in point, St. Kitts and Nevis are the case in point. It's a very water stressed environment. Already prior to much of the impacts of climate change, there was no surface water, opportunities and options like we have in some of the Caribbean countries. And as the impacts of climate change, took root and increases, naturally with saline intrusions and all of those things that are occurring already and predicted to occur even more, the freshwater lenses are becoming much more constrained and are disappearing. And to a large extent, it means that whatever solutions you are putting in terms of the energy system must find ways of addressing and supporting these challenges to support the water sector to become one that is capable of withstanding these stress periods which are going to increase as we go forward. It also will help to ensure that the economy of the country, which is mostly tourism dependent now, and to a lesser extent in agriculture and fisheries, which are both very climate sensitive sectors, can be transformed to sectors that are not as climate sensitive and likely to be affected by the potential impacts of climate change. So you would have heard from the ministers speaking earlier, some of the conversations around ensuring that energy can become an economic sector in its own right. And this is really the kind of way in which we have been approaching the work that we are doing. So to a large extent, what we have done is really support the countries in respect to what we call 3 main pillars, which is really governance. And that looks at everything from policy to regulations and legislation pieces that are able to provide the kind of enabling framework for things to happen in a predictable and in a consistent way. And of course, the second area that we provide support in as a pillar is what we call planning. We have different types of planning, whether it is that it's integrated energy planning, which is really the entire energy sector, or if it's the electricity